Columbia W264DF.
From the Bart Fireside Studio, the solution for keeping you warm this winter.
This is 107 The Point.
Ooh, I like when you press that one.
This is Sports Talk with Phil Kornblum, Chris Bergen, and Pat Daniel. Sports Talk is heard across the state on radio affiliates of the Sports Talk Media Network and is streaming live on SportsTalkSC.com, as well as Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. The South Carolina Education Lottery lucky number to call in is 888-898-2525. That's 888-898-2525. Now, here are Phil, Chris, and Pat with tonight's edition of Sports Talk.
And good evening, everybody. Welcome into Sports Talk Media Network. Big Thursday edition for you here, coming from the Dave and Buster Studios in Columbia. Phil Kornblut, Pat Daniel here. Chris Bergen joining us momentarily from up at James Madison. We're Coastal Carolina taking on the Dukes tonight. Busy day. The Panthers have their new coach. We'll get Pat's spin on that. Pat being the Panther devotee that he is. I happen to like it. I happen to like Frank Reich. Coaches get fired from certain jobs. I thought he did a good job with the Colts for the most part. I think that's a good hire. The guy's got a nice background. He was a good backup quarterback most of his career in the NFL. Known for that huge come-from-behind playoff win way back with the Bills. So interesting hire. I think a good hire from that standpoint. But, of course, the head coach now, who does he hire? Who runs his offense? Does he run his offense? Does he call his plays? Does he bring in somebody who runs his defense, et cetera, et cetera? So we'll see what happens there. But the Panthers have filled their head coaching position. Gamecock basketball last night. Competitive with Florida for the first 20 minutes. Not competitive with Florida for the final 20 minutes. They got down to single digits. They were down 8, and then they trailed by 9, and then Florida hit them with a run, took it up to 20, and they never could get it under single digits the rest of the way. They pretty much trailed by double digits the entire second half. But there's some positives that come out of it. Number one, it looked like they played hard. They went after it on the boards. They actually out-rebounded Florida last night. What hurt them was turnovers and blocked shots. 24 possessions where you get nothing because of a turnover or a blocked shot. Those are just empty possessions. And Florida took advantage of those possessions, of those turnovers, of those blocked shots. Florida had 21 fast break points. I got to believe a good bit of that came off of those turnovers and blocked shots. And offensively, G.G. Jackson had a good night for the Gamecocks. He had another double-double, so he continues to, last few games playing at a pretty high level. He ended up with 20 points on the night, and he had 10 rebounds. How about Josh Gray? 21 minutes, career high, 11 points, career high, 13 rebounds. So, maybe you're starting to get something out of him that's been in there, and it's slowly being developed. A big man that can give you something. And he pretty much stayed out of foul trouble. He had 3. Having Hayden Brown get into early foul trouble did not help. He picked up 3 fouls early. He only played 9 minutes the entire game. He ended up fouling out and played just 9 minutes. He had 2 points. So that hurts for the Gamecocks. But didn't shoot it particularly well. They're not a good shooting team. Missed 8 free throws, only 5 3-pointers. Castleton had a big game once again for Florida. He's just a darn good player. 18 points. He had 4 blocks. He had 3 rebounds. He had 3 assists in only 22 minutes. So he can do a little bit of everything. So another loss for the Gamecocks. And now they go to Georgia, a team that they can maybe play with in Athens and be competitive with. That's all you can ask for right now with this Gamecock basketball team, is just try and be competitive. Lamont Paris has just got to try to hold it together as best as possible through this season, probably figuring that he's going to lose G.G. Jackson after this season, I would think. I think the way G.G. Jackson's going right now, the pros have to like him. I mean, the pros don't care about your team's record. They want to see what you look like individually. And he's able to, without much help, he's able to put up some pretty good numbers. So sounds like he's being looked at as a top 10 kind of pick right now. So you got to expect him to move on, which won't necessarily be a bad thing for the program. Yes, it was great to have him for the 1 year, sort of like Anthony Edwards at Georgia. Great to have him. They went 16-16 in his 1 year. I don't think the Gamecocks are going to sniff the 500 mark, but you move on with less heralded players, but maybe a more cohesive group that works together, and Lamont Paris builds his roster in his image. We shall see what happens there. Women's basketball tonight got a huge one, Tennessee and Connecticut. And, the followers of women's basketball or basketball in general will be paying attention to that one, including around here because South Carolina still is to play both of those teams in their upcoming schedule. I mentioned Coastal Carolina on the road tonight at James Madison. Let's welcome in Chris Bergen, who's left the friendly confines of the Berkey Palace in beautiful Sardis and is up in Harrisonburg, Virginia, where it's been snowing a little bit.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful part of the country. If you've never traveled up here into northern Virginia and Shenandoah Valley, it's a lovely part of the country, and they've got a good basketball team to come and watch because they are fifth in the country in scoring. So Coastal's defense is going to be tested tremendously here tonight against a good James Madison team who came in and sort of flexed their muscle when they came into the Sun Belt in football this past fall. Actually won the East Division. They couldn't qualify for the bowl or for the championship game because they were ineligible, transitioning from FCS. But they actually won the tiebreaker with Coastal. So theoretically, they won the division. Coastal represented the division. And so James Madison making its presence known in the Sun Belt in a relatively short period of time.
Anybody on JMU that you have to be aware of?
Young man named Vado Morse. He's their leading scorer. They actually have about 4 guys who average in double figures, so they spread it around pretty well. But Vado Morse is probably the guy to keep an eye on. He's averaging 13 points a ball game. But the key for them, not just their ability to score, also their ability to steal the basketball away from you. They are second in the country in steals per game, just behind Missouri, who you may remember Coastal played back in November. Missouri had 16 steals in that ball game. Coastal can't afford to turn it over that many times via the steal and hope to have a chance here tonight.
You think the Chanticleers are pretty angry after what happened with Chicago State? You think they've kind of got their mind right going into this one?
Gosh, you would certainly hope so. If that game did not square their mindset, certainly just looking at James Madison should. And Phil, ironically enough, if you happen to see the score last night, I was kind of following along just to see what might happen. Chicago State actually had a double-digit lead on the road at Stanford in the second half and couldn't hold it. They ultimately lost to Stanford, but I'm not sure if they gained a bunch of confidence, certainly gained some with their win on Monday night in Conway. And they almost went back-to-back after having not won a road game in 22 tries. They almost went back-to-back and took down not just a mid-major, but also a high major in the process. But I'm hoping Coastal will come out with a much better effort. If not, they're in danger of getting blown off the floor by this team because, again, they're averaging over 80 points a ball game. They lead the Sun Belt in scoring, so they can get it up and down the floor in a hurry. And they actually know their head coach pretty well, Mark Byington, who was, you'll remember that name from the College of Charleston, and also having worked inside the league at Georgia Southern. He's now in his 3rd season here, so he's had a lot of success. He's actually 5-1 in his career against Coastal, so he's had some success against Goodfellas and the Chanticleers.
All right, looks like only other game of note tonight for us in the state, Clemson women playing Georgia Tech tonight. That game is in Atlanta, so we got Coastal men at James Madison, Clemson women, Georgia Tech. And I think that's it for our basketball slate tonight. Of course, plenty of it coming up on Saturday. We have USC getting another football commitment today. Elijah Caldwell, fine-looking receiver from Northwestern, Shrine Bowler, announced his commitment to the Gamecocks about, 1:15 or so, I think it was. He put it out on Twitter, and we'll talk more about him and recruiting coming up a little bit later on. Also, an update on Nick Harbor. Spoke to his dad today after the meeting last night with South Carolina. I don't know what he's going to do, but if you listen to the dad and you take the dad's words to heart and how he feels apparently and how the mom feels apparently, just now look, he's talking to a guy from South Carolina, and that focus is on South Carolina when I talk to him. But boy, they love the Gamecocks. He loves the Gamecocks. When I'm talking I'm talking about the dad. I don't know about the player. I've never talked to Nicholas, but the dad loves South Carolina, loves Shane Beamer. The mom loves Beamer, loves the dog, Boomer. Can't say enough about Boomer the dog. They just have got a tremendous, tremendous personal relationship. Now, is that going to be enough? Does a young man feel the same way? This would be, one of those rare signees, Chris and Pat. I mean, true major difference maker, I would think, whether he plays tight end or defensive end. He has said he wants to play tight end in college to help him staying in shape with his sprinting and track. And so tight end kind of, I guess, figures in more along those lines. But look, tight ends have a huge, huge impact these days on offenses. Just look at Bowers at Georgia. And I could see this young man with his size and his speed playing tight end with Spencer Rattler at South Carolina and just destroying defenses down the field if he ends up in South Carolina.
That's a shame that Shane Beamer isn't recruiting his father, because I read your story today and I got the same reaction, Phil. He would sign with South Carolina yesterday, it seems like, but whether or not his son does, is he in the same, you talked about sort of program changing type signee. I mean, is this a Jadeveon Clowney, Marcus Lattimore, Stephon Gilmore type guy that would totally elevate the program?
I would say, it's harder. Now, correct me if you think I'm wrong, either one of you. Is it harder for tight ends to have that kind of impact versus a defensive end or a running back? Maybe in today's offense, and because he's so versatile, because he can play attached, he can split out, he can play a number of different ways there. Maybe they do have that kind of impact. But, Clowney was like on defense what a Trevor Lawrence and a Deshaun Watson were to Clemson on offense. A definite generational player, a definite game changer, because you had to account for him. If you're an offensive coordinator and an offensive line coach, you had to account for him every snap. Where is Clowney? How are we going to block him? Because he could run you down from anywhere. And, Harbor looks extremely dangerous as a defensive player as well. But he wants to play on the offense because of the track part of that and being in the proper condition for track. But I could see him being a devastating weapon on offense as a tight end, making catches and then turning on that speed. Sort of like a Winslow was back in college and then in the NFL. The original Winslow, not the son, but the original
Kellen
one.
Senior.
Yeah,
Kellen Senior. But you look at how tight ends are being utilized in the NFL right now, Phil, and I'm not so sure San Francisco is in the championship game this weekend, if not for George Kittle. I mean, he is a difference maker for sure. And I think the college game, because of the spread attack now, you can utilize a H-back or a tight end and basically turn him into your slot or fourth wide receiver. I think that position is just as dangerous as any other on the field. And South Carolina has tried to utilize that tight end ever since Beamer took over. And I would imagine that'll be the similar fate for the offense when they bring in, Dowell Loggins and he starts running the offense, because if not, I can't imagine Harbor would be listening to them anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. But they've done everything they can do. They've laid it out. They've done all the visiting, the calling, the whatever you have to do. They've gone over the top with this guy from the standpoint of showing him that they want him and their family and all that. Now, do they have the pedigree of a Michigan, of a Oregon, of a Miami, old Miami? Do they have that pedigree? They do. Maryland's not the threat from a pedigree standpoint, but they're the threat because they're right across the street. As Mr. Harbor has said, he can walk to the Maryland campus. They go over to basketball games all the time. He hangs out there. So Maryland is that close, So he's got the backyard selection. He's got the selection long way from home in Oregon. And the track at Oregon is going to be very important, of course. And who wouldn't be blown away by what they have out there in track? I mean, their track facilities are second to none. And then you got, of course, the winningest program ever in Michigan calling on you. And then there's Miami, which, flash and dash. And then there's the Gamecocks, which is love and homie and family and we're climbing sort of thing. So that's kind of how you lay it out. That's kind of how you look at the 5 finalists for him right now. It all depends on, where his buttons being pushed, the most. So
I mean, I would think it was good news that Shane Beamer got the final visit yesterday of the head coaches that came through. But is it bad news for the Gamecocks and the other programs that are recruiting him that Oregon gets the final official visit before recruiting is shut down on Sunday prior to signing day next week?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they get the last chance to spend quality time with them. And again, you got Nike out there. You know how big he is into track. And Oregon's got the greatest track facility in the country. They host all the NCAA championships, the Olympic trials, where they always held. University of Oregon, Steve Prefontaine, and all the other great track people to come through that program. That's big. That cannot be diminished. So we'll have to wait and see. How it plays
Curtis,
out.
And one advantage that South Carolina does have, it may not have the Oregon pedigree, but Curtis Frank can sell his program as one of the top track and field programs in the country as well.
Oh, yeah, and he's one of the top coaches, and he's produced national championships as a team with the women and some individual. But, again, I've seen pictures. I've seen pictures of the Oregon facility out there, and it's mind-blowing what they have. Real quick before we hit the break, your take on Frank Reich to the Panthers?
I would disagree from one perspective about you setting it up, and I think he could be a good hire. I'm just in the camp that I watched how the Panthers responded after Matt Rule was kicked to the curb and Steve Wilkes took over in the interim, and they did not have Christian McCaffrey. We're still dealing with the changing rotation at quarterback and how hard those guys played for Steve Wilkes. Now, when we had Corey Miller on during the football season while this was unfolding, I actually asked him, do you think Steve Wilkes deserves the shot because of how hard those guys are playing for him? And Corey said that's not how the NFL works, and I think we saw that today. That's who David Tepper wanted, was Frank Reich. And I don't know that it's necessarily a bad hire just on the surface, but Phil, I'm sort of, especially from the Panthers' perspective, just watching, they got within a game of winning what was a putrid NFC South, honestly, but still, they had a shot to go to the playoffs, and I'm not sure anybody would have believed that when Christian McCaffrey was traded out to San Francisco, and I think that's all because of the job that Steve Wilkes did to rally that team together and get them to play hard, and then he's basically said thanks but no thanks, and I can't imagine he's going to stay on Frank Reich's staff. That would be an interesting maneuver if Frank Reich's able to hang on to him. I will say this, though, from the Panthers' perspective, it is the first head coach that they have brought in with an offensive background and mindset. And maybe that's what they need. Maybe that's how David Tepper approached it. I need somebody who can put points on the board. And certainly Frank Reich is as good a developer of quarterbacks in an offense as anybody they could find. But I was in the camp that I was hoping Steve Wilkes would get the opportunity just because of the way the Panthers played the back half of the season this year. But we'll see.
Sure.
And Chris, just to help you out there, you probably have not seen it while covering the ball game there. It has now been reported. I saw Joe Person say this first, that he said, quote, Panthers thought it would be weird asking Steve Wilkes about potentially taking a position on Frank Reich's staff and vice versa, because both were interviewed as head coaching candidates. In other words, they are acknowledging that Steve Wilkes will officially not be a part of the staff moving forward in Carolina. And then also seeing a report stemming from that the Falcons are attempting to reach out and looks of bringing in Wilkes to potentially fill their role as defensive coordinator. So he may stay right in the division and go directly to a rival.
And that makes perfect sense. If I'm Steve Wilkes, I'm not sure I want to stay around the building either. It's not a situation where it's sour grapes. It's just, look, I did a good job. I think I deserved that opportunity. You didn't get it, so go somewhere else where you might get an opportunity on down the road.
Yeah, you're right. And the Panthers also, just in part of a statement they have since released, they said, quote, we are trying something new while going back to the future at the same time. And what they're alluding to, a lot of Panthers fans out there may have forgotten, Frank Reich actually was the starter in the very first game for the Panthers back in '95. He threw the very first touchdown pass for the Carolina Panthers franchise.
Really?
He sure did. To whom?
Ooh, now that I don't have the answer off the top of my head. Help me out.
Phil, you want to hazard a guess as to who caught the first official touchdown reception as a Carolina Panther?
Let's see. First official touchdown catch for the Panthers. That would have been, was it home or away? If it was home, it was at Clemson.
It was on the road. It was at Atlanta, ironically enough, to face the Falcons.
At Atlanta. I'm going to guess. I don't know. Who was it?
Well, we were talking tight ends. How about this name? Pete Metzelaars.
Oh.
Caught the first ever touchdown pass for the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, I had like 0% chance of getting that right.
I would not have known either. I just happened to see the highlight on Twitter a bit earlier today, so I can't take credit for that.
Yeah. Yeah, would not have ever guessed that. All right, we will go to our break. I'm going to go to the break, and then we'll come back with more. Our phone number, 888-898-2525. That's the South Carolina Education Lottery lucky number to Sports Talk. Since '02, more than $174 million in lottery proceeds has been used to purchase, maintain, and fuel over 2,000 school buses in South Carolina. Learn more about the lottery's impact at sceducation.lottery.com/education wins. Playing for fun to win for education. Mike Morgan coming up at 7:05 tonight. We'll be back.
Major Billy Downer here from the Department of Natural Resources, and DNR is excited to announce the implementation of Go Outdoors SC, a new online licensing and boat titling system that you can access right from your phone. Through this new system, customers can purchase their hunting and fishing licenses, renew their boats, apply for lottery hunt opportunities, and complete electronic harvest reporting requirements. For more information, visit Go Outdoors SC at your local app store.
When your day calls for some winning, why not watch your favorite football team at Dave & Buster's? We've got massive HD TVs and hundreds of the hottest new games. Sip from our chef-crafted cocktail menu with exclusive drinks such as the Strawberry Watermelon Margarita or Dangerous Waters. Cheer on the team with Cantina Nachos or wings featuring one of our 12 wing flavors. When your day calls for some winning, it's time for Dave & Buster's, where you can watch the games and play the games. Locations in Greenville, Columbia, and Myrtle Beach.
Touchstone Energy Cooperative members save more on electricity, and members save more on insurance, groceries, healthcare, restaurants, travel, concerts, and sporting events through Co-op Connections. Touchstone Energy is an alliance of the member-owned electric cooperatives, and as a member, the power is yours. Experience the power of co-op membership with Touchstone Energy and find out how much you can save on electricity and a whole lot more at touchstoneenergy.com.
We'll get to some phone calls here in a little bit. 888-898-2525 is the number. We got Mike Morgan on the move at 7:05. Comments from Lamont Paris. And Jim Corbett, attorney for the Stars, something we're going to do here as long as the Murdaugh trial runs, because, you know, here on Sports Talk, we talk sports, but we also realize sometimes we like to give back in some other ways. And we thought this is such a big story that everybody in the state of South Carolina is paying attention to. And Jim's going to join us to give us the attorney perspective, not necessarily every day, but maybe a couple of times a week, kind of explain what's been going on in the trial and share whatever insight that he can. So he'll be coming up a little bit later on this evening as well. One note today, we'll pass along some others. The Conference Carolina announced today that they're going to start playing football, those schools, in 2025, Conference Carolina. It's a bunch of Division II schools. They've just added Shorter University, and North Greenville announced they're going to move from the Gulf South to that league when they start playing football full time. So it's got to be good news for North Greenville, because they can certainly be much more competitive there, I would think. Bergie, you got to leave us shortly, but you wanted to comment on the Gamecocks from last night.
I'll do that in a second. I wanted to echo your thoughts about North Greenville. It's a terrific move for them from a football perspective, because the Gulf South is, in some regards, at least on our side of the country geographically, like the SEC of D2. I mean, it's an extremely difficult Division II football league, and North Greenville could contend and win Conference Carolinas because they don't have a whole lot of football playing schools right now. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that's going to lay the framework for other schools that are in that league to add football. But I think it's a really good move. Plus, it'll cut down on travel for them. So it's a good move, I think, for North Greenville in 2025. You're talking about the Gamecocks, and we mentioned last night one thing about Gigi Jackson. He's got to get some help from Meechie Johnson and Hayden Brown and maybe Chico Carter. Some of those other guys have got to start stepping up and playing better. And Hayden Brown, Phil's got to find a way to stay on the floor. The guy has fouled out of 3 of Carolina's SEC games already. And he's got, I think I saw in the state today, he's got 20 more fouls committed than the next closest Gamecock. I mean, I realize he's a physical player, but he's got to find a way to play under control, because he is giving them nothing when he's sitting over beside Lamont Paris. And Coach Paris has commented on him about how gutsy and gritty he is, and he's the kind of guy that they need. But he's not doing much from the bench, and they've got to figure out a way to keep him out of foul trouble because he's certainly not helping them. And I think one thing they may want to go back to is the bigger lineup with Josh Gray.
Yeah, Josh Gray starting to come on. All right, you have a great call tonight. Thank you, Chris. Back in a moment.
On Point Weather is made possible by our friends at Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union on 107 The Point.
Here is tonight's forecast. We're clear and cool overnight with a low dipping down to 30. Tomorrow, much like today, with less breeze, we'll have sunny skies, a high reaching 54. For Saturday, gorgeous weather. Sunshine, 58 degrees, while on Sunday, good chance we get some late afternoon showers. Weekend highs in the upper 50s. I'm Kevin Cohen with your On Point local weather.
Are you looking for free checking and free savings? Dave Ramsey here, telling you to go see my friends at Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union. They're not a mega bank that's so big they lose the ability to treat you like a human being. At Palmetto Citizens, you're not just a number, you're a member. Join today at any of their 14 locations or at palmettocitizens.org. Federally insured by the NCUA.
With SRN News, I'm Keith Peters reporting the National Archives has asked former presidents and vice presidents to recheck their personal records for any classified documents following the news that President Joe Biden and former Vice President Mike Pence had documents in their possession after they left office. The archives sent a letter Thursday to the representatives of former presidents and vice presidents, from former President Ronald Reagan to the present, to ensure compliance with the Presidential Records Act, which states that any records created or received by the president are the property of the U.S. government and will be managed by the archives at the end of the administration. On Wall Street, the Dow by 205 points, the Nasdaq rose 199, the S&P advanced 44, oil up 86 cents to 81.01 a barrel. This is SRN News.
My brother. It's January. It's 2023. A brand new year. Time for a brand new pet in your home. Columbia Animal Services invites you to bring home a brand new best friend for the new year. Time to visit petfinder.com to find that new puppy or kitty cat for your home. There's no better way to get 2023 started than to do so with an adoption special of just $23. Visit petfinder.com and get your new family member to start the new year. Happy New Year from Columbia Animal Services.
Don't hurt people, don't take their stuff. Hey, Point listeners, I'm Casey Whitener, and I used to think don't hurt people, don't take their stuff was a basic human value. Then I noticed how many times our government hurts the people it's meant to protect. When I joined the South Carolina Libertarian Party, I met citizens like me who were tired of government violating our rights. I'd like to invite you to join me. On the last Monday of every month, come out to the British Bulldog Pub in Irmo at 6 p.m. to meet me and my fellow libertarians. Mention you heard this invite on the Point, and I'll buy you a pint. Learn more at sclp.org.
Fran Halloran here. Now listen closely to what I'm about to say. I'm a business owner, and many of you listening right now, you're business owners as well. The first rule in owning a business is this: don't waste money. I see business owners waste their marketing dollars all the time. Not me. I figured out a long time ago, 8 years ago to be exact, that spending my marketing dollars at the Point was not only intentional, but extremely profitable as well. If you're a small business owner, you owe it to yourself to sit down with Kevin Cohen and ask him to create a custom marketing plan for your business. He's looking for folks just like you who believe in local, to partner with him in 2022 and beyond. Trust me when I tell you, partnering with The Point works. You will see results and your marketing budget will no longer be wasted. Give Kev a call at 803-563-8558 and tell him the Money Coach sent you.
You've seen the news. You've talked to your friends. You may have even looked around yourself. Home prices are nuts. Seems like no one is offering any kind of discount except Lexington Discount Homes. Discount is their middle name. Quality homes that fit your budget with the size, model, and floor plan that your family needs. You can still afford your dream home at Lexington Discount Homes, Augusta Highway near Ballpark Road, 803-951-1900 or LexingtonDiscountHomes.com.
Are you worn out from wall-to-wall political talk?
Instead of hearing more about the stuff in Washington that's mostly out of your control, I'll give you the tools to actually take control of your money and your life. Dave Ramsey here. Join me right here on The Point. I'm live and taking your calls weekdays at 2 p.m. I'll teach you how to get on a written plan that actually works, get out of debt, and build wealth. Weekdays at 2 p.m. The Dave Ramsey Show at 100.7 The Point.
Welcome back. Sports Talk Media Network, 888-898-2525 is our phone number. To your phone calls in just a second. Just to catch up on a couple of things around the SEC last night. Besides the South Carolina loss at Florida, you had Tennessee beating Georgia 70-41. to 40-41. Texas A&M won at Auburn. How good are they getting? 79-63 to win at Auburn in the jungle. In Alabama, number 2 in the country, beat Mississippi State 66-63. So Alabama's 8-0. 8-0, 18-2 overall. Tennessee and A&M 7-1 and 6-1. Auburn drops to 6-2. Florida, Kentucky. Kentucky hasn't lost since losing to the Gamecocks. They're 5-3. Mizzou is 4-4. Georgia now 3-4 and 13-7. So a game that South Carolina can go and be competitive in, no doubt about it. Vandy's 3-4. Arkansas is 3-5. Gamecocks are 1-6. LSU, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State 1-7. ACC last night. Just a couple of games. Boston College beat Louisville 75-65. Louisville is 2-18. I thought I would never see that for a program like Louisville. And Pitt, we put the whammy on Wake Forest after being up there and seeing them beat Clemson, talking about how good they are. They haven't won since. Pitt beat Wake Forest 81-79. Coming up Saturday in the ACC, you got Louisville at Notre Dame, Boston College at Virginia, NC State at Wake Forest, Duke at Georgia Tech, Miami at Pittsburgh, Clemson at Florida State, Syracuse at Virginia Tech. That Clemson-Florida State game, intriguing, dangerous game for Clemson. Florida State 7-14 overall. Got to believe that they are better than the record indicates. That'll be a good one. NC State, Wake Forest should be a pretty decent one. And nothing else really jumps out at me on the schedule. Maybe Syracuse, Virginia Tech a little bit. In the SEC coming up, it's the SEC Big 12 Day. The Challenge on Saturday. South Carolina not invited. You got Auburn at West Virginia. You got Alabama at Oklahoma. You got Texas Tech at LSU. Iowa State at Missouri. TCU at Mississippi State. Arkansas at Baylor. Texas at Tennessee. That should be entertaining. Florida at Kansas State, and then Kansas at Kentucky. Now, Kentucky's on the uptick, and Kansas has lost 3 in a row. Of course, ESPN was hoping that would be a couple of, top 2, top 3 teams. Not the case. Ole Miss at Oklahoma State, and then you got the Gamecocks at Georgia and Vanderbilt at Texas A&M. So there you go with the basketball scene for now. And, of course, the USC women, this is their off week. You have a mandated off week, and the USC women taking advantage of that. And do they need a break? They're well rested now. They're healthy for the most part. So they're in good shape here as they start to hit the home stretch of the season and got those big games coming up down the road. Of course, things are going to get a little more interesting for them. But their next game will be Sunday at Alabama. Then they've got Kentucky at home. And then February 5th, they go to UConn for a noon tip there on Fox. And then a week later, it's LSU in Columbia at 2:00. And then a couple of weeks later, February 23rd at Tennessee, 7:00. So those big ones are looming for the Gamecocks, Pat.
Just to circle back real fast, you're talking about Florida basketball and of course, the Gamecock men playing the Gators last night. Do you happen to remember the name Keontae Johnson?
Yeah.
And have you followed him? Just remarkable story. For those that may have forgotten, back in December of 2020, Keontae Johnson was one of the most sought-after prospects out of high school, and at Florida was looking every bit the part, looked like a future lottery NBA draft pick, and then tragically collapsed on the court during a game in December of 2020. Ultimately, I believe he graduated Florida, then kind of parted ways, never played at Florida again. But he has now transferred to Kansas State, where he's resurrected his basketball career. Kansas State right now is first place in the Big 12. They're number 5 in the country, and Johnson leads the team with 18 points, 8 boards, and 2 assists a game, and looks like he may still have that NBA future. And this weekend on Saturday, the Florida Gators will actually play Kansas State in the Big 12 SEC Challenge. So just thought that was kind of neat. Happy for the guy.
Interesting. So by losing last night at Florida, the Gamecocks moved up one spot in the net. They moved up a spot to 278 with their loss. Now, Smitty did some research for us, and before we get to phone calls, I want to take a look at this. He did some research and sent us some information on the net and how the net is compiled. And, I mean, you have to have a degree from MIT, I think, to figure it out because it's pretty convoluted. If you haven't ever looked at the formula for the net, I mean, I used to think the RPI was complicated, but the net has really added to it to the extreme. So to get your net ranking, let's see here. Let's see. Where is what they sent to me? Looking at the wrong text.
I've got it if you want me to help, Phil.
No, I want to talk about it. No, give me a second here. I want to find it here. There we go. So I was looking at the wrong text. So net NCAA evaluation tool ranking. Tool, the optimate word here, because I think it takes a tool to figure it out. Team index value based on game results. Algorithm set up to reward teams who beat other good teams. Results-oriented component of the net. Factors: opponent, location, winner, which morphs into the team value index score. You follow me, Pat? Then you've got the net efficiency. Offensive efficiency minus defensive efficiency. So O minus D equals net efficiency. Now the O is comprised of field goal attempts minus offensive rebounds plus turnovers plus 4.475 times free throw attempts. 0.475 time free throw attempts equals total number of possessions. And then on the defensive side, opponent's field goal attempts minus opponent offensive rebounds plus opponent's turnovers plus 0.475 times opponent's free throw attempts equals total number of opponent's possessions, and then some other gobbledygook there. Another component, winning percentage, same calculation for any sport. Wins divided by total games played equals winning percentage. And then adjusted win percentage, weighted value based on location and result. A road win counts as plus 1.4. A neutral point is 1.0. A home win is 0.6. A road loss is minus 0.6. Neutral is minus 1. And home loss is minus 1.4 equals the adjusted winning percentage. And then there's scoring margin, point differential capped at 10 points in each game. Team score minus opponent score equals scoring margin. I can figure that out. That is all that goes into the net. I wonder who dreamed that up at some headquarters somewhere.
Gosh, and not only is it overly complicated, but first thing that sticks out to me is that does not factor in whatsoever if a team has injuries. Maybe a team goes 30-3 on the season, but those 3 losses were because their best 2 players were out for those games, or even in the last couple of years, maybe they had COVID and they weren't able to play or something. But you're going to penalize that team because of that. And you would have thought with all this convoluted math in there, they could have figured out a way to equate that into the picture as well.
All right, let's get to some phone calls now that we have bored you to tears with our class on the net rankings there. But I thought that was kind of interesting because I really didn't know what made up the net rankings, and that sort of tells you. We go to Hank in Columbia, who I'm sure at night when his head hits the pillow, last thing he thinks about from the USC women's standpoint is their net ranking and how it's been put together for that week. Henry, welcome into Sports Talk. How are you?
I'm doing fine, and you're right. The last thing I think about is the net. The last time I thought about the net was back when we got close a couple of those times when Frank Martin was there, and you had to have a quadrant 1, a quadrant 2, and we'd always have that quadrant 4 loss at the beginning of the year.
Yep.
That no matter how many wins we had, it trumped the entire season.
Yep.
It always seemed like it happened a couple of years in a row.
Yep, it was. When you're on the edge, when you're on the bubble like that, you start going back and looking at the nitty-gritty report for the net rankings, and yep, those quadrant 4 losses always come back to haunt the teams that don't make it.
And we would always have, like with Frank Martin, we would always have one within the first 2 to 3 games of the season, and it never would go away. It would hang on like a fort. So that's all I think about the net. But a couple of things, Corn. One, when you're discussing the thing about Oregon, the big thing to remember is Oregon tries to wow everybody with their facilities. But Oregon, if you've ever paid any attention, which I'm sure you probably haven't, to track and field results.
Oh, wait a minute. What do you mean you don't think I pay attention to the U.S. Olympic trials, the NCAAs?
Oh, no, I'm talking about NCAA.
I pay attention to the NCAA competitions.
Who won the national championship last year in the NCAA?
Arkansas.
No.
LSU.
Florida swept the championships. The
Okay.
girls and their board team won the championship.
Well, I bet you Arkansas finished second.
Arkansas was up there. Arkansas was a little bit down the road. I think Texas finished second.
Okay.
But I kind of just mentioned that to say, Corn, that even though Oregon has all the facilities and all of that, they don't ever have a track team that places in the top 10 teams in the country on the girls or the women's side.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like Oregon with everything. They use that night money to have these outstanding facilities, but it doesn't seem to result in Oregon having number 1 football recruiting classes or basketball recruiting classes ever, for whatever reason. So, if you not saying that Harbor won't be wowed by Oregon, but
Speaking of that and recruiting rankings and all that kind of stuff that you believe in, I read this in The Athletic today. Roughly 3,000 high school seniors were evaluated during the 2022 recruiting cycle. Among that group, 34 were designated with 5-star status. 34 out of 3,000. According to this story, only 43% of the 5 stars since 2016 have started at least one game as a true freshman, with 1 in 5 starting more than 6 games in their first college season. By year 2, 78% have cracked the starting lineup, and 52% are starting at least half of their team's games. My point there, and what their point is of course, it's great to sign the most ballyhooed players, but more than half of them aren't starters in their initial year. Maybe some are contributing, but they aren't starters. And the point is, give them a chance. Don't expect so much out of some of these highly ballyhooed players. They don't always play up to that level.
Well, Corn, I've been listening to you for like about 25 years. You did a story on that years ago when you had one of the recruiting analysts come on, and he basically said the only thing a 5-star should be a kid that should be getting playing time by his second year and should end up being a 2-year starter. Remember, I think a guy that you had him on as a guest. He said, a 4-star should be a guy that's contributing and should be able to be a starter in his 3rd or 4th year on campus. And then, it was hitting this with your others. But it was like a 5-star was not expected I think some of the players people get confused is some of these 5-star players that are generational folk who, when they come on, they're just that. But most of the 5-stars should be having some playing time their first year. That guy said on your show, and then Irvin used to do that Sunday night recruiting show thing. And by their second or third year starting. So I believe it. But the reason I brought that up about Oregon Corn was the fact that when you look at Harbor, if you want to look at something that is a plus for Coach Fry, that in addition to him winning a national championship here at their track, is Coach Fry has twice been the Olympic coach. If you remember, he's twice been the Olympic coach for the sprinters for the United States. He was it in Atlanta, and then just recently, some years back, he was hired. I can't remember. It wasn't Tokyo, but it was another one of the Olympics. So 2 times he's coached the Olympic. He's coached the Olympic team sprinters as the lead sprint coach. So I hope they are using him, because if we track people, it's about who trains them.
Yeah.
That's the big difference. Not where they are. It's who trains them, if you remember. But Coach Fry twice been chosen to coach the Olympic team, so that shows you his knowledge base. And then I have one thing to say about basketball, Corn.
Okay.
I hope people are, remember when Frank Martin is here and he's always talking about year zero, and the way that the team was kind of blown up or was disintegrated last year for Paris, I kind of look at this as a year zero. But I look around at the other squads who had their whole squad basically disintegrated last year, and the coaches were hired late in the realm, and then they had to grab everybody from the portal in the SEC. And those squads, us, LSU, I can't remember if it's Mississippi State or Ole Miss or whatever. Ole Miss coaches been there, but us, LSU, and a couple of others, like you said with Georgia, you see those squads, no matter how much they went and grabbed people out the portal, they're picking up these 30-point losses also, almost on a nightly basis.
Well, I mean, it's tough. It's tough to put a basketball team together with pieces here and there when guys aren't used to playing with each other, and especially in a case with a new coach, and everything is new at South Carolina with so many new pieces, a new coaching staff. But let's just face it. I mean, this South Carolina team is, from a talent standpoint, way on down the ladder right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Just way on down the ladder. He did the best he could with what he got in the short term. Let's see how the recruiting goes. Let's see if he can win some recruiting battles in his own backyard and elsewhere, and see what kind of team, once he gets a chance, a coach has to recruit and build a team in his own image. Let's see what he does over a period of 2 or 3 years.
I agree with you, Corn, and that's just what I was pointing out. I looked at LSU the other day when they got beat by 40, and then I think the other night they got beat by 30. And I saw it, and I said, I think it's just a product of these teams who are coming together under a coach going through the league. And I think some of these beatings they're taking is because if a coach thinks they're going to be there, they're installing their system now. They're installing their system now so that they can recruit to their system for people to see. Instead of, sometimes people cheat to get cheat their system to get a quick win here or there, or an inconsequential winner there, and then it hurts them down the road, 2 or 3 years down the road. I think Paris is trying to establish how he wants them to play, and some of these guys are not capable of playing that free-flowing 5-out system that he does. But the ones who will stick in recruiting may help him down the road. So I just hope people just give him a pass this year, because it's just hard with that type of talent. And you said if you out-rebound a team, that means you are working.
Yeah, the effort was there. Effort was there last 2 games. Thank you very much, Hank. We appreciate it. But they just have got to avoid these extended slumps offensively that's putting them 20, 25 points behind in almost every game now. Let's go to Gamecock Larry up with us next here on Sports Talk. To what do we owe the pleasure of your call, Gamecock Larry?
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to put your mind at ease. Don't worry about Harbor. We will know next Wednesday. But
Oh, you mean Harbor, not Harbaugh.
oh
Harbor.
yes, sir. He gave all roads lead home, so he'll be okay. But I want to talk a little bit about this basketball team. I might have talked about it before. You might have told you the same thing I'm going to say now. But I'm going to tell you, I turned that radio on last night, and after about 10 minutes, I thought we had a chance. But boy, I tell you, I must have fell asleep, but I'm glad I did. Because I tell you what, we got a no-name coach. We got a no-name staff. We got a disoriented, I can't say the word. But we got a team that don't know, seem like they don't know a basketball from a softball. And that coach comes out and did you hear that post game that he talked? I turned him off. I wouldn't even. And today I listened to 100.7. I wouldn't even listen to it. He called himself. They say give him time. Yeah, we got to give him time. But I guarantee you, if the good Lord's willing and God's Gamecock letter is still around, we're going to have to do what 2 or 3 years from now, what we should have done. No, we can't do that. I'm all mixed up. But anyway, I don't know. I don't care what to say. This is the worst basketball team has been since Newton. I don't know whether you even remember Newton or not, but they had Newton for 1 year, I think it was.
2.
And this coach don't even talk like a. Oh Lord, let me get off this thing. I ain't gonna say nothing else. I'm gonna let it go. I'm not gonna listen to no more of this games. I'm not gonna look at them. I'm gonna just listen to what the radio say about it. And I don't think they gonna win another game this year. That's the way I feel.
All right.
I hate to say it, but Lord help us. We need some help. But y'all later. Love all of y'all.
Yeah, Larry.
Go Gamecock.
Larry, thank you. Thank you. Hope you're doing well. Appreciate your phone call. Listen, you just got to write off this year for Gamecock basketball. Yeah, you just got to write it off. I mean, look, when Frank Martin was fired, much of the team left with him for one reason or another. And what was Lamont Paris left with when he took over? Nothing. Look at the starting lineup. Maybe just one, Chico Carter. He's a carryover, but everybody else pretty much in the starting lineup is a newcomer. So, I mean, he had to, let's see, Jackson's a newcomer. All right, Jacoby Wright and Chico Carter. So Hayden Brown, Meechie Johnson, G.G. Jackson, and then you got Josh Gray's a carryover. Hankin Sanford is new. Zach Davis is new. Bosman's Verdonk is new. So most of the players who are playing more minutes are new. I guess 3 are carryovers who are playing, substantial minutes. But unfortunately, I mean, none of those 3 are going to put fear into the hearts of any of the opponents the Gamecocks are facing. And they're just not a very overall talented team right now. That's just how you have to look at it. And he's not a magic man who can, wave his wand and all of a sudden, this isn't like Rick Barnes at Clemson in year 1 with the slab 5. Somehow that came together. Of course, he had a pro who eventually became a great player in Greg Buckner. I think Greg Buckner was one of those 5, right? And he was a freshman, and he was originally going to play at Providence with Barnes, and he came to Clemson. Who knew how good he was going to be? He turned out to be a great player. He turned out to be one of Clemson's all-time greats and played in the NBA. But the rest of them, can you name them? Tom Weidman, Greg Buckner. Who was the one that Dean Smith yelled out from Turkey?
Yeah, Terrell McIntyre and then Jameson on that squad as well. I don't remember the Turkish guy.
Eturbi. And then remember when Barnes yelled at Smith for yelling at his player, for talking to his player? Don't talk to my players. Oh, that was a team that would get after it now. Be right back.
Someone will be right with you. The point.
WQXL Columbia, W264DF.
From the Bart Fireside Studio, the solution for keeping you warm this winter.
This is 107. The point.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Keith Peters reporting. 5 Memphis police officers have been charged in the death of a black motorist, Tyree Nichols. Shelby County District Attorney Steve Mulroy tells WMC-TV it's important for the community that the violent traffic stop be fully investigated and that those responsible for Nichols' death be fully prosecuted.
It's my hope that if there is any silver lining to be drawn from this very dark cloud, it's that perhaps this incident can open a broader conversation for police reform. The world is watching us, and we need to show the world what lessons we can learn from this tragedy.
Nichols, 29, died January 10, 3 days after a traffic stop by Memphis police that ended with Nichols severely injured in a hospital. An antagonist of former President Trump enters the California Senate race. More details from correspondent Bernie Bennett.
California Democrat Congressman Adam Schiff officially launched his bid for the U.S. Senate Thursday, making him the second entrant in the Democratic battle to potentially replace Senator Dianne Feinstein. Schiff's announcement follows fellow Democrat Katie Porter jumping into the race earlier this month. Feinstein does not have said whether she'll run for a 6th term in office, but she's widely expected to retire at the end of her current term. Other California Democrats, including Representatives Barbara Lee and Ro Khanna, are also said to be plotting potential runs for the Senate. Washington.
Russia fired more missiles and self-exploding drones at nearly a dozen Ukrainian provinces early Thursday.
My brother-in-law died suddenly, and now my sister and her kids have to sell their home. That's why I told my husband we could not put off getting life insurance any longer. An agent offered us a 10-year, $500,000 policy for nearly $50 a month. Then we called SelectQuote. SelectQuote found us identical coverage for only $19 a month, a savings of $369 a year.
Whether you need a $500,000 policy or a $5 million policy, SelectQuote could save you more than 50% on term life insurance. For your free quote, call SelectQuote at 1-800-940-6161. That's 1-800-940-6161. Or go to SelectQuote.com. That's 1-800-940-6161. SelectQuote. We shop, you save. Full details on example policies at SelectQuote.com/commercials.
BestHotGrill.com.
Here's the Wall Street Business Report.
Stocks climbed today to send Wall Street to its highest level in nearly 8 weeks, following a report suggesting the economy and corporate profits may be doing better than feared. Wall Street digesting a growing torrent of earnings and economic reports. Today's headliners show the economy held up better through the last 3 months of 2022 than expected. Reports from Tesla and others helped build optimism. The Dow was up 205 points today to finish at 33,949. The Nasdaq gained 199 to 11,512. The S&P 500 added 44 points to 4060. New York oil rose 86 cents to $81.01 a barrel. For the Wall Street Business Report, I'm John Scott.
News and analysis at townhall.com. I'm Keith Peters.
On Point Weather is made possible by our friends at Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union on 107 The Point.
Here is tonight's forecast. We're clear and cool overnight with a low dipping down to 30. Tomorrow, much like today, with less breeze, we'll have sunny skies, a high reaching 54. For Saturday, gorgeous weather. Sunshine, 58 degrees, while on Sunday, good chance we get some late afternoon showers. Weekend highs in the upper 50s. I'm Kevin Corn with your on-point local weather.
WQXL Columbia, W264DF.
From the Bart Fireside Studio, the solution for keeping you warm this winter.
This is 107 The Point. Ooh, you shouldn't have pressed that button. Oh. Now you get this.
Welcome back to Sports Talk on the Sports Talk Media Network. You can reach the guys with the South Carolina Education Lottery lucky number, 888-898-2525. That's 888-898-2525. Now back to Phil, Chris, and Pat with the second hour of Sports Talk on the Sports Talk Media Network.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Good to have you with us. Hour number 2 of Sports Talk Media Network on this Thursday night. Phil Kornblut, Pat Daniel from the Dave and Buster's studios here in downtown Columbia. Don't forget about Dave and Buster's. Eat, drink, play, catch all the big games all season long. Dave and Buster's, Greenville, Columbia, and Myrtle Beach. We welcome those of you just now able to join us over the airwaves. Had a great first hour. A lot of good phone calls, the ones that we got to, a lot of good conversation. And we will have more of the same coming up for you here in this hour, including a visit from Jim Corbett, who's keeping an eye on the Murdaugh murder case as we go a little bit outside our comfort zone and cover one of the big news stories in the state of South Carolina in many a year. We'll hear from Lamont Paris, the USC basketball coach, and USC basketball coach who suffered a loss last night down at Florida. Got recruiting coming up for you as well. Tell you more about Nick Harbor. Talk about the commitment the Gamecocks got today from Elijah Caldwell. Right now, though, it is time for another edition of Morgan on the Move, starring Mike Morgan, brought to you by Brent Skinner Clothiers, right here in the Vista in Columbia. Brent Skinner has not only become the leader in Columbia for the very best in men's clothing, but clients nationally have come to know Brent, and he has you covered if you want to look your very best. Brent and his staff provide you with professional and individual attention to create a wardrobe that distinctly and identifies you. From custom suits and shirts to the very best in shoes and accessories, it's all under one roof. And if you can't make it to the Columbia store in the Vista, Brent will come to you. Just set up that appointment today at bpskinnerclothiers.com. Mike, welcome. And let's begin. Let's begin, first of all, with an opportunity for you to shoot down a number of major rumors. Are you or are you not a candidate to replace Chip Carey as a TV voice of the Braves?
First off, the main reason I think people tune into this show, and certainly the reason why I come on and listen to it, is to solve the great murder mysteries throughout South Carolina and the country. So if you could tell me who killed Jeffrey Epstein, who got in the cell, who let him in, clearly it was not a suicide, who covered it up. If we could just break that down for the next few minutes, and I'll hang up and listen.
We'll turn that over to Jim Corbett as well, our super sleuth. Now answer the question.
Good stuff. I've got no answer for you on that. I've got no answer for you on that other than I was surprised as anybody else. I knew Chip, which is to say when I work with the Braves, when I travel with the Braves, I got to know him more and more. Always liked Chip, a genuinely good person. You know as well as I do, there are many people in our business who are very folksy on the air, but are complete a-holes off it. And that does not fit the description of Chip Carey at all. But, a lot of different rumors out there why you would leave the Braves to take a job with the Cardinals. So I can just say it was a surprise to a lot of folks down here for sure.
Yeah, that sounds like a non-denial denial to me.
Well, if for some reason I was actually interviewing for the job, I certainly wouldn't come on your show and talk about it. But
Exactly.
I'm sure whoever does
So
get the
you're
job
not
will be
talking
very
about
happy.
it. You're not talking. As I'm putting the pieces together, since we are talking about investigative journalism here tonight, as I'm putting the pieces together, you've refused to answer the question directly, and now you just said you wouldn't talk about it if you were. So I deduce that you are, because thusly you're not talking about it.
Well, that's quite a deduction. I don't think that's really very accurate, but I like your sleuth work there. No question about that. And I would just say I'm very happy where I am.
There you go. As are we. Okay, Colin Castleton. What do you think of him overall as a player?
That's your lead question. This is all over the map tonight.
That's what we do.
We're solving murders. We're asking about jobs. We're talking about the Florida center. Like,
yes.
What's next? Are we breaking down the St. Louis Blues front line? What? Colin Castleton. Well, I'll put it to you this way.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the new coaches in this league, Matt McMahon of LSU had just as much, if not more, success than any of them with the job he did at Murray State, 3 NCAA tournaments, victories in the NCAA tournament, several conference championships in the Ohio Valley. He's at LSU now. Virtually nobody returned from last year's team, and they're in the cellar. Why do I mention that? Because if Colin Castleton decided to not come back for another year at Florida, which he was not going to. I've interviewed him on this subject, and he was all but gone. Florida could easily be in the cellar right now with LSU, with Ole Miss, with Mississippi State. The fact that Coach Golden got him to come back for another year changes the complete complexion of that team. And you see that. I didn't watch much of the game last night. I know his numbers weren't overbearing, but he affects everything. I mean, he's a willing passer, so he makes Florida better on offense. He's a rim protector. If he's not blocking shots, he's altering them. I think he still leads the league in blocks. He's a very good college player. I don't know if he's going to make it in the NBA. I don't care. I just know he's very good in the SEC, and any team would be lucky to have him.
Yeah, absolutely. He's always been good against South Carolina. Block shots, rebounds. The Gamecocks played him to an 8-point game at the half, fell behind in the second half. It got into the 20s and got away from them once again. I'd say about the only thing you could ask for right now for South Carolina, would you agree or disagree at this point, against most of the teams they play, is just give great effort, because you're not talented enough to play with most of the teams on your schedule. You don't shoot it well enough. You can't defend well enough, but you can give great effort and give something Lamont Paris to kind of build on going into next year, as he is going to have to remake this roster once again, I would think.
Yeah, look, I don't think anybody, including Lamont Paris, is surprised at what they walked into today. This season. It's a roster that it's not up to par with the other programs in the SEC. One McDonald's All-American alone does not change the fate of your entire season. And I give them credit. They have competed hard. I don't think there's any quit on that roster. They pulled off a stunning win at Rupp Arena, which is going to look even more impressive a month from now, because I think Kentucky is starting to catch fire. But every game is going to be a struggle. I still think there's winnable games left on the schedule. I think they're going to win some more games in league play, but they're going to be games like last night where they don't play well, they're overmatched at particular positions, and it's just going to be a struggle.
What'd you take from last night's action around the SEC? Anything in particular stand out? I would have to suggest maybe Kentucky now seems to have righted the ship after that shocking loss to South Carolina. They haven't lost since then, and to beat a really good to beat a where were we at here the other day? Kentucky. Well, they won at Vanderbilt, so they won the other day. They won on Tuesday. Texas A&M at Auburn going into the jungle. So talk about what Kentucky has done since that loss to South Carolina, and then how Texas A&M, after their very slow start, has just turned it around and become a force in the league.
I think that's the bigger story right now, is what Buzz Buzz Williams is doing at Texas A&M. They just snapped the longest home winning streak in the country at Auburn in the Jungle. They've got a guy in what they call Boots, Tyrese, who's 6'2" and is one of the best rebounders in the league and gets to the free throw line more than anybody in the league at 6'2". He's a unicorn. He's a unique type of player that plays like he's 6'10". I think overall, and I've had them a couple of times, nobody wants to play A&M. Nobody wants to deal with them. They beat you up. They grind you out. And right now they're just winning games because they have found enough offense to complement that defense. So I think A&M is one of the best stories going. I know Joe Lenardi had them first four out. They're a tournament team. I'd be shocked if we don't see them in the tournament. And they're the kind of style that travels come March. That they can win games 58-54, 62-61, like that. They can do all those things. They get to the free throw line. They play defense. Like they could be a problem for anybody in the tournament. So I think that's the best story going now, because we've already told the story of Alabama. We've already told the story about Kentucky. We know they're the best two teams out there. Mentioned Kentucky is picking it up right now. But I think, and Missouri's been the surprise team of the SEC. I've got them Saturday in the Big 12 Challenge against Iowa State. That place will be rocking in Como. So those are some of the stories we're already familiar with. I think A&M is becoming one of the best stories potentially in the country if they keep winning the way they are.
Okay, I know you're in the heart of basketball season, but I know you're keeping an eye on baseball as well, because you got that coming up on your agenda in a few weeks. We met with we had Mark Kingston on the show a couple nights ago. We had Eric Bakich on the show last night. Kingston met with the media again today. Bakich is going to talk to the media tomorrow. We'll talk to other coaches around South Carolina as college baseball practice begins. But I want to talk about the Gamecocks. And again, this looks like a team that can do some really good things. Kingston talks about the pitching, how healthy they are. He thinks he's got 6 quality arms who could be starters. Then, of course, he's looking for 4 starters, and two of those who don't start will drop off into the bullpen. You got Wimmer moving full-time to shortstop, which means Braswell is going to end up playing somewhere else in some capacity. That's how good he believes Wimmer is. He thinks Wimmer is one of the best shortstops he's ever coached because of his range. So in general, and I know you got a lot of digging to do down the road, but South Carolina baseball, and I know you keep an eye on baseball.
Phil, I don't have it. I don't have a scouting report on Carolina baseball in January.
You know their arms from last year. They're healthy arms. How good can the Gamecocks be in baseball? Thank you very much.
I have no idea, because in order to answer that question, I'd have to look at the arms of the other 13 teams that they're going to compete against. So, look, it's going to be a bounce back year. I think. Well, I don't think I know. People around that program knew last year was going to be a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
This year, the expectations are higher because you got a lot of those premier players back. You pick up some newcomers in recruiting. Obviously, Mark Kingston knows it's a very big year for him personally. There's no doubt in my mind they're going to be better. But to give you a full assessment of where they stack in the SEC, I'm not prepared to give you much on that on January the 26th.
Now, let me go ahead and give you a little insight. They'll be in the top 5.
Please.
They'll be in the top 5.
Okay.
All right, mark it down.
Top 5 of the league?
Of the league, which,
okay.
That's pretty good. Now,
I'll mark that down.
Were you shocked that the USC softball team was picked last by their coaches in their preseason poll?
Now you want me to break down? What about the equestrian team? Where do we think the equestrian team stands right now?
We bring you on for everything SEC and a little ACC. That's your purpose in life. You're Mr. SEC.
I'm not Mr. Softball. I haven't called an SEC softball game in my life, and I don't plan on doing one this year. So you're going to have an extra. Maybe Jim Corbett, when he's solving the Kennedy assassination, can break down the SEC softball hierarchy.
Oh, all right. Let me ask you this. Back to basketball, since you're so in tune with basketball. Going to shift gears and go to Clemson.
Can talk football. I'm up with SEC football 365. We'd have never a bad time to talk football.
No, I'm going to go to Clemson basketball because
they're
Clemson
basketball.
17 wins. They continue to lead the ACC. Got to give them a lot of respect. This is a good-looking team in my eyes. He's got some depth, and they're winning without two of their best players who've been out with injury. So when they get to the tournament, they're going to make the NCAA tournament, barring a complete collapse, and maybe be, right now they're saying 8-9 seed. Maybe they'll be higher. But, I mean, do you think from what you've seen, is this a team that can do some damage in the tournament?
Well, I want to see what kind of seed they get first, and that does matter. It really does. I think some people just think, well, as long as we get the tournament, what's the difference? There's a big difference between being, say, a 4 or 5 seed and getting to play a mid-major in the first round versus being, say, in that 8-9 game, and it's a pick'em game, and you're usually playing another Power 6 school. And so, in other words, there's a lot of meat left on the bone. I like Brad Brownell's team. I like the way they're playing together. You mentioned the injuries. If they're healthy, I certainly feel better about where they can go. And I respect Brad Brownell as a coach. And coaching really matters more once you get to that NCAA tournament, because very often you're going to be playing in games where the talent is relatively equal. So just keep on winning if you're Clemson. Keep on making a better and better case to be a higher seed and create your path to making a deep run in the tournament. Don't just get in there by the skin of your teeth. Get in there and have a good enough seed where you can do some damage.
All right, last thing, you want to talk SEC football. So Alabama appears to be close to rehiring Jeremy Pruitt to be their defensive coordinator. Tide Illustrated reported he was on campus this week. Of course, they got to find a new OC as well. So what do you think of that if it happens? And, I mean, the crimes against him at Tennessee, because he's only going to be an assistant, not a head coach, they don't follow him to Alabama?
That's a great question. Much better than your softball question.
Yes.
I think
this was actually a softball question about football.
Yes, very well done.
Yes.
No, here's the thing about Jeremy Pruitt. It could not have ended any worse than it did in Knoxville, but he was absolutely loved in Tuscaloosa by Nick Saban, by the staff, by the fans. Jeremy Pruitt was a very, very hot name. It looks laughable now, considering it couldn't have been a bigger disaster than it was in Knoxville. But if you can get him as a coordinator, and it's not like to my knowledge, he's not carrying a show cause, right? So if he's not carrying a show cause, maybe you get a phone call from Greg Sankey. I don't know. But the NCAA now, as toothless as it appears to be, I don't know if they'll do anything to stop it.
I agree.
And if they look, I can't deny the fact that the guy's a good coordinator, a good recruiter, and it would be an asset. And Nick Saban doesn't invite you back unless he knows you've got something to offer. He's not just doing it out of the kindness of his heart or out of loyalty or anything else. He knows that the guy could give him something. And I don't think he was ever in love with the two coordinators who just left. I don't think there was a big fight to keep those two coaches around, both of whom, of course, have departed for other jobs.
Okay, Mike, always a pleasure. Enjoy your game coming up on Saturday. Again, you'll be doing a game in the SEC Big Ten Challenge. Everybody lives for that.
Big 12.
Big 12, my bad. Everybody lives for that annually. And you've got, as you mentioned, you have got Iowa State at Missouri. So enjoy that, and we will talk to you next week.
Well, sounds good. Please let me know, was it the second shooter behind the picket fence? I think the CIA was involved. Look under Oswald. He was a contract agent for the CIA. He lived in Russia. He got back very easily. I don't know what Marina's involvement was, but you can find out from Jim Corbett.
Hey, your Googleness is quite, you're on top of your game.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And Googling things. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Have a great
All
weekend.
right.
See you. All right. Who was the other guy he mentioned? Marino? Never heard of that one before.
Not sure.
With the Kennedy assassination. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mike. We appreciate it. We got to go to the break, and we'll come back with more here on Sports Talk. We got recruiting coming up. We've got comments from Lamont Paris coming your way as well. Update a couple of things. Got the Clemson women playing Georgia Tech. 15-15 at the end of a quarter. Make it 19-15 Clemson as they play in the second quarter. James Madison and Coastal Carolina, they are in the first half. It is the Dukes over the Shots, 17-10. Be right back.
Hope, life, and the great Palmetto. What do these things have in common? Scholarship dollars. The SC Hope, the Life, and the Palmetto Fellow Scholarships are funded by the lottery players of this great state. And after 20 years, you've invested over $7 billion in education. $7 billion. Impressive. The South Carolina Education Lottery. When you play, we all win.
George Bryan for Tsunami Bar Sports, our inventor, David Abernathy, has always said Tsunami Bar technology allows us to take the training to the grass. Now I know through my sport of golf that natural agility can be converted to athletic ability. And why is this, Tsunami, Robbie?
Transferring the training to the grass. This may be the most undervalued characteristic of the Tsunami flexible bar technology. The Tsunami bar action loads and unloads at the concentric and eccentric transition points. This is what we call reversal forces. And the Tsunami bar is the only bar and training device that I know of that can train these reversal forces adequately at speed.
Hey, this is Phil Kornbluth. The Tsunami Bar is a terrific training device, whether you're working on your fitness or your golf game. It's convenient, it's easy to use, and you won't feel beat up afterwards. Be sure to click on the digital ad on SportsTalkSC.com and get 5% off any order using promo code BBB5. Don't wait, order today.
When your day calls for some winning, why not watch your favorite football team at Dave & Buster's? We've got massive HD TVs and hundreds of the hottest new games. Sip from our chef-crafted cocktail menu with exclusive drinks such as the Strawberry Watermelon Margarita or Dangerous Waters. Cheer on the team with Cantina Nachos or wings featuring one of our 12 wing flavors. When your day calls for some winning, it's time for Dave & Buster's, where you can watch the games and play the games. Locations in Greenville, Columbia, and Myrtle Beach.
Hi, I'm Jim Corbett. I've been an attorney for more than 30 years. There's one thing I've learned about injury cases. It's you need the personal touch. You need the lawyer to get to know you and describe your damages. You don't want a case manager talking to an insurance company, and then talking to you, and then talking to maybe to a lawyer with limited experience at the last minute to try to settle a case. I talk to you. I find out what your case is about. Jim at JimCorbettAttorney.com. Jim at JimCorbettAttorney.com for your injury cases.
All right, thanks again to Mike Morgan. That guy's quite a character, isn't he? He's quite the character. Appreciate Mike being with us tonight. I think he'd do great in the Braves booth. I'm not so sure. And I guess that would be that's a marquee position, obviously, in play-by-play world. I mean, there's only so many Major League Baseball TV play-by-play jobs. If you get one, that's pretty cool. But I think he really likes what he's doing, traveling around, doing the different games. He's got football, basketball, baseball all going on, but I could see him slide into that job if he wanted and if they were interested. So we'll see what happens. In the meantime, speaking of jobs, Pat, you ran across something that was written about Lincoln Riley and Clemson. That could have happened a few years ago.
Yeah, quite the article coming out today in the Post and Courier from John Blau. And he interviewed Lincoln Riley, current head coach at Southern Cal, and was asked about his younger brother Garrett being the new offensive coordinator at Clemson. And Lincoln's response was quite shocking. He said, quote, "I can remember when I was at East Carolina from 2010 to 2014, the last couple of years there, kind of being in that part of the country thinking, man, that'd be awesome if something opened up at Clemson and I could go run the offense there for Dabo." Those type of opportunities don't come up and they're hard to get. And it's worth noting that exact time frame after 2014 is when Lincoln Riley left to go to Oklahoma to be their offensive coordinator. Well, after 2014 is also when Chad Morris left Clemson. So that offensive coordinator position was open at Clemson when Riley was actively looking to go somewhere else and ended up at Oklahoma. So the timing could potentially have worked out. Now, Clemson fans out there, of course, will push to Tony Elliott and Jeff Scott, then became co-offensive coordinators for Clemson, went on to help lead the Tigers to 2 national championships. So I think they probably are okay with the results, but still worth noting that Lincoln Riley, one of the hottest names in football, could have been at Clemson and was interested.
Now, when did Chad Morris leave?
After 2014. Then he went to, SMU, I believe?
After 24. Isn't that a little soon for him to have left? When did Clemson win? He was on the first national championship team, wasn't he?
No, he was not.
He wasn't?
Nope.
Okay. We'll be back.
On Point Weather is made possible by our friends at Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union on 107 The Point.
Here is tonight's forecast. We're clear and cool overnight with a low dipping down to 30. Tomorrow, much like today, with less breeze, we'll have sunny skies, a high reaching 54. For Saturday, gorgeous weather. Sunshine, 58 degrees, while on Sunday, good chance we get some late afternoon showers. Weekend highs in the upper 50s. I'm Kevin Cohen with your On Point local weather.
Hey, it's the Cigar Militia. We want to thank the Midlands for a wonderful first year. Thank you for helping us grow. We had no idea we had so many good friends out there. One thing I love about the cigar culture is we all have our favorite brands, but we're also willing to try new ones too. Come in and get your old standby, or have one of our knowledgeable staff members walk you through the humidor to your new favorite. We're at 1410 Colonial Life Boulevard in the same plaza as the Melting Pot Restaurant.
With SRN News, I'm Keith Peters reporting Russia fired more missiles and self-exploding drones at nearly a dozen Ukrainian provinces early Thursday, causing the first war-related death in Kyiv this year and killing at least 11 people overall, according to Ukrainian authorities. The attacks adhered to Russia's recent pattern of striking power plants and other critical infrastructure about every 2 weeks. However, the latest onslaught came after Germany and the United States upped the ante in Russia's 11-month war by promising Wednesday to send high-tech battle tanks to Ukraine and greenlighting other allies to do the same. On Wall Street, a good day as the Dow Jones Industrial Average was up by 205 points. The Nasdaq rose 199. The S&P advanced 44. Oil up to $81.01 a barrel. This is SRN News.
My parents ask, what's the best way to save for college? I'm State Treasurer Curtis Loftus, and my answer is always open a Future Scholar 529 college savings account. It's easy. You can get started online with any amount. It's flexible to adapt to your child's college dreams. And you can deduct 100% of your contributions from the South Carolina state tax return. So what are you waiting for? Go to futurescholar.com and see why it's the smart, easy way to save for college. futurescholar.com.
Loyalty is an important quality, but it's not a given. It's earned. Shooter's Choice has earned the loyalty of people around the Midlands because they have great customer service, tremendous selection, and they've been the local guys for more than 30 years. And that should matter to you. If you're looking for the right firearm, ammo, AR accessories, even a gun safe, visit the folks at Shooter's Choice on Sunset Boulevard in West Columbia. This is where you'll find the experts, the folks that actually shoot, they hunt, or visit a big box store where you'll never see the same person twice, where their only expertise comes from watching some YouTube video. Shooter's Choice has the top brands. They offer classes to make sure you develop proper safety technique and skills. Most of all, they offer the best quality products at fair prices sold by good local people. If you can't make it to the store, you can visit online, shooterschoicesc.com. They're also on Facebook and Instagram, or they're waiting for you at 944 Sunset Boulevard in West Columbia. Make it your first choice, your best choice. Make it Shooter's Choice.
Hi, this is Chris Neely from the South Carolina Public Charter School District. Join me Monday afternoons at 5:30 as I team up with Kev for Kids First. We'll tackle the issues facing our schools, pointing out the positives with our students and teachers. Kids First, Mondays at 5:30 on The Point.
Getting involved in your community is easier than you think. If you can click, you can help. If you can share a status, you can lend a hand. If you can log on, you can give back. Because when you volunteer virtually with AARP, you can help your community without even leaving home. AARP has all kinds of opportunities to get you started. and will provide the support you need to make it easy and fun. Your community needs volunteers like you. Get involved at aarp.org/volunteer here.
The Dennis Prager Show, weekdays at noon, right here on The Point. Take time for a visit to PragerU. We'll tackle today's issues, interview intriguing newsmakers, do some teaching and some learning together on 100.7 The Point and MakeThePointRadio.com.
Hi, honey. How was your first day back at work?
Well, that slip and fall sure did cause me some pain and discomfort. And this swollen ankle is no fun. Thanks to True Pharmacy, the day wasn't a complete waste.
I'm so glad they were able to get you all set up with your ACE bandage wrap and even a set of crutches.
Yes, who knew you could rent your crutches from True Pharmacy?
And they even have wheelchairs to rent and sell. That's good information to know in case we ever need it for our parents as they get older.
I'm so glad we found True Pharmacy. True Pharmacy, 2 locations, West Columbia and Devine Street.
Okay, time for recruiting on this Thursday night edition of Sports Talk, brought to you by Seawells. Oh, my goodness. First of all, boy, if you wanted to do a crime in the Midlands area today, I guess Midlands area, between noon and like 1:30, you could have gotten away with it because, like, there was some kind of police thing, not an incident, but a conference, a meeting of police people at Seawells today. I mean, cop cars from everywhere were there. They were in there, of course, enjoying themselves on some great Seawells food. And I was there for the daily luncheon buffet. Today was roast beef Thursday with a little chicken and a great array of vegetables. And I would have gone anyway, but a buddy of mine, another victim of my deep knowledge, lost a wager, and he wanted to pay it back with a Seawells luncheon buffet. So I, of course, took him up on it. You don't have to wait on winning a bet. It's not expensive. It's only $13. So make sure you get over there for the daily luncheon buffet. And of course, now you got a lot of things coming up this spring with weddings and a lot of parties and corporate outings, maybe banquets of all types. Seawells, they are the people to call about your big event because they got a beautiful facility in Columbia. You don't have the room, you don't have the space, you don't have the time, you don't have the energy, you don't have the knowledge. They got it all, and they'll take care of your event professionally and personally. They are at 1125 Rosewood Drive. Their phone number is 803-771-7385 and online at SeawellsCateringSC.com. So the Gamecocks, they stay hot in recruiting. Another commitment. This for the 23 class. 23 class is about done. Northwestern receiver Elijah Caldwell, 6'1", 190, commits to the Gamecocks today, announcing that on Twitter, picking the Gamecocks over NC State. Originally committed to West Virginia, but decommitted in December. Some other offers were Georgia Tech, Purdue, East Carolina, Duke, Appalachian State, and Middle Tennessee. He played for the Shrine Bowl team and had 4 catches for 61 yards in that game. It was the hours and days following that game that USC receivers coach Justin Stepp really picked up the recruiting intensity with Caldwell, who said that Stepp loves the way he plays, and that offensive coordinator Dowell Loggins said that he loves the way he plays and how aggressive he is. 77 catches, 1,365 yards, 20 touchdowns this past season. Northwestern coach Paige Wofford said Caldwell, a lot of great things about him. Great desire to win, desire to do well, using the talents that he has. Big, strong, physical receiver. You could put him anywhere that you wanted to. And he can change the score from anywhere because he can break that first tackle. And his leadership is outstanding. So the Gamecocks have 5 receivers in their group of 23 newcomers, which now totals 32. He's also the 8th recruit with ties to the state to pledge to the Gamecocks. Okay, Nick Harbor. USC was in the home last night to visit the defensive end, tight end out of Washington, D.C., Shane Beamer, and several Gamecock assistants. They were the last to be in. 3 head coaches were in last night. Mike Loxley of Maryland and Mariol Cristobal of Miami also were in. Earlier, Dan Lanning of Oregon and Jim Harbaugh of Michigan came through. Talking to Nick's father, Azuka Harbor, he said, quote, the meeting really went well. It's like old family meeting each other again. We were just having a good conversation. It was refreshing. We talked about a lot of stuff. We talked about the dog, Boomer. My wife is in love with Boomer. It was fun. They're cool with each other. All the coaches are all in. It was just a very good old time. It was just a lot of fun to be there and hang out with them, end quote. Beamer's had many conversations with the Harbors throughout the process. This is final chance to see them in person before the dead period hits Sunday night. He did his best to make his message very clear to Nick Harbor, quote, just to let him know that he is in good hands, his father said. Quote, that's the message I got from him, that no matter what, you are in good hands. We are going to take care of you. I asked him, I said, if I drop off my child to you, what happens? He told me what he's going to do. I will take care of your child for you. I said, okay, thank you, sir, end quote. So Beamer's done everything he can to position his program to have a shot with Harbor, made all the calls, sent all the text messages, made all the allowable visits. He even took staff members to Texas Tech last weekend to watch Harbor run in the Texas Tech relays. Now, according to Azuka Harbor, Beamer and his assistants were the only coaches from the schools Nick is considering to be in attendance for the track meet. Quote, it means a lot. Yes, most definitely. It tells the child there's someone who cares about you, not only about football. They care just about you, just to come see you. It means a lot to fly all the way from South Carolina to Texas to come see him. That meant a lot to him. I appreciated that, end quote. As for the other two visits last night, Maryland and Miami, Azuka Harbor said they also went well. Maryland's the home team, he said, around the corner. They go watch basketball. He hangs out there sometimes. And he said with Maryland, it was just touching base with each other, getting to know that they still have feelings for Nick. Miami, he said, second time he's met the coach. They met a couple of weeks ago when Nick was running in Virginia, spent some time there with him. And he just wanted to tell him that they are still interested in his son. The last step in the process for the Harbors comes this weekend. They're flying out tonight to Eugene for an official visit at Oregon. Obviously, the great track history at Oregon, major selling point. In fact, they've seen the track side of things at Oregon because when Harbor ran in a meet there a year or two ago, they got a chance to see it. Quote, we were only around the track area, so we never went around the campus to see what it's all about. We were just with him and sitting in the bleachers. And then after that, we went back to the hotel. We've never did anything beyond that, end quote. So once the Harbors return home, their plan is to discuss the 5 options and then come to a decision. The decision will be announced on February 1st, signing day, during a ceremony at a school, which is slated to start around noon. 2025 defensive tackle Elijah Griffin of Savannah plans to be at USC Saturday. And the Gamecocks handed out several new offers. Many of these we touched on last night. Let me see if there's anybody else new in here that maybe I didn't touch on. 2025 defensive end Jacaleb Falk of Highland Home, Alabama, 6'3", 220. 2026 cornerback Nasir McCoy of Hapeville, Georgia. That's a new one. 2025 receiver Jameer Joseph of Montvale, New Jersey. Some of the new offers for the Gamecocks. More players acknowledging plans to be at Clemson Saturday for their junior day. Defensive tackle Heaven Brown Schuler of Atlanta. Defensive end Darian Mayo of Olney, Maryland. Offensive tackle Jamison Riggs of Hiram, Georgia. Cornerback Charles Lester of Sarasota, Florida. Defensive back Ashton Hampton of Tallahassee. Also, Clemson offered defensive end Solomon Williams from Tampa. Clemson target running back David Eziomumi was offered by Wisconsin and West Virginia. LSU offered USC commitment tight end Michael Smith. Northwestern running back Turbo Richard offered by UConn and Georgia State. Georgia Tech offered Greenville receiver Mazio Bennett. Quarterback Riley Staten has transferred from Gray Collegiate to Greenville High. That's big for the Raiders. This guy can throw it. AC Flora tight end Jack Mosley committed to Lenore-Rhine, and Northwestern offensive lineman Marcus Macon committed to South Carolina State. That will do it on the recruiting front tonight. Oh, by the way, nothing to add to Trajan Jeffcoat's story today. Just nothing to add. So when there's something to add, we'll add it. But right now, as far as we know, nothing to add. When we come back, kind of step out of our lane, as you heard Mike and us discuss. Jim Corbett going to join us. He's keeping an eye on the Murdaugh trial, get his thoughts on what's happened so far after the break.
Show your team pride wherever you go with Founders Federal Credit Union's collegiate debit cards. Get your University of South Carolina and Clemson University debit cards at any Founders office or by calling 1-800-845-1614. Plus, our debit cards are digital wallet ready, so you can pay however you please. Not a member? Visit relaxjoinfounders.com or one of our 37 convenient locations to see if you qualify for membership. Terms and conditions apply. Founders Federal Credit Union is federally insured by NCUA.
Touchstone Energy cooperative members save more on electricity, and members save more on insurance, groceries, healthcare, restaurants, travel, concerts, and sporting events through Co-op Connections. Touchstone Energy is an alliance of the member-owned electric cooperatives, and as a member, the power is yours. Experience the power of co-op membership with Touchstone Energy and find out how much you can save on electricity and a whole lot more at touchstoneenergy.com.
Life. It has its ups and downs. Sometimes it's little things like hitting every red light or dropping your cell phone. Maybe it's the bills, rent, or pressure at work. But when it comes to the South Carolina Education Lottery, you should never feel like playing will solve everything. The lottery is a game. It's played for fun. So set a dollar amount. Expect not to win and make sure responsibilities, family, friends, and work come first. Visit playresponsiblysc.com.
Join the Trailblaze Challenge, the endurance hike program where big hearts come together for big steps to create hope for local Wish families through Make-A-Wish, South Carolina. This spring, take part in a new journey on the Palmetto Trail. From sunrise on the highest peak in South Carolina to the coastal marshes of the Lowcountry, hikers of all levels can support critically ill children, enjoy and explore the outdoors, and build South Carolina pride and community through an all-inclusive hike experience. Visit sctrailblazechallenge.org to learn how to get started. That's sctrailblazechallenge.org.
The story you're about to see is true. The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
You know, here on Sports Talk, we spend 100% of our time, ordinarily, talking sports, taking our minds off the really important issues of the day in South Carolina and around the world. But sometimes the outside world does intrude. And, you know, I thought the Murdaugh case in Walterboro, I mean, that really has captured the attention of the nation. And, of course, right here in South Carolina, captured the attention of everybody in the state. Everybody's following it. I mean, it's the OJ trial of our time here in South Carolina. So I thought that from time to time, as often as he wants to, we'd ask Jim Corbett, great attorney here in Columbia, to analyze things for us that are happening in the trial. He'll keep an eye on it, of course, as an attorney, somebody of interest, knowing a lot of people involved in the trial through his own legal work. And I thought he could share some insights with us on occasion, kind of make it simple for those of us who don't know the law that well. So Jim joins us now for our first edition of this, and we thank you very much, sir. How are you?
Good evening, Phil. I'm doing fine. Sad that this is going to draw so much attention to South Carolina, but if it does, we need to, I guess, talk about it a little bit and make some sense of the process and the procedure.
Let me ask you a question. That's a good point that you just kind of touched on. I mean, the entire nation is watching. I mean, is the state of South Carolina, in the eyes of the nation, also a bit on trial here? The attorneys, the jurors, the judge, as they look in, because this thing is being televised. You know, millions of people are watching every day because they love this stuff. In some way, is our own judicial system in the state kind of going to be on trial here?
Well, I mean, people are going to watch and look and see, but I don't have any I don't have any fears that Judge Clifton Newman's going to do anything that will draw attention to the judiciary in a bad way. And I think that the lawyers are seasoned. They'll have their sparring and they'll have their dust-ups, but it's basic stuff that really needs to happen. There have to be objections. The defense lawyer's job is to try to find any way to try to have the jury think that, well, I don't think this guy's guilty because, the standard is beyond a reasonable doubt, a doubt for whichever reason. So I don't think South Carolina's on trial in this case because it's a murder case, and that happens. The things that really draw attention to are the thought that this family was so powerful and knew so many people and was able to do so many things that they couldn't, that they could get away with stuff. And so I think those financial crimes are really going to be the ones that if anything puts South Carolina on trial, that does, especially the legal system. Did he get away with stuff? This is the worst part. It's the saddest part, but it's not the part I think that's going to give disrepute to South Carolina.
Yeah. And just to make it clear, so this is the murder trial for the murder of his wife and son, and there's still a trial to come later on about the monetary crimes, correct?
Right, could be. He could enter guilty pleas. His own lawyers have been quoted as saying that he knows he's going to have to do jail time at some point, but it's not for the murder. They vehemently deny that he's guilty of the murder. So those are coming down the pike, and that evidence is apparently going to be part of the motive for what the prosecution is going to try and prove as to why this was done by Alex Murdaugh. So they'll come into play, and the judge is going to have to rule, what it specifically is allowed in, if anything, about his other financial crimes, because you probably heard that prior bad acts are not admissible to try to convict someone of this bad act. However, if it's part and parcel of the story, including motive, then that's something that the prosecution is going to want to introduce to say, why did he do this?
So where are we now at this stage? I know jury selection's over, opening arguments are over, not cross-examining, but examination of witnesses has started. Where are we here on this Thursday evening?
Well, they go through the basics to begin with. And the first thing the prosecutor has to remember to do is make sure that they prove that the killings happen in the jurisdiction in which this man's being tried. So they have to get the crime scenes out. All the things that we have seen and heard and think we know, they have to do that to the jury. Establish that there was a murder, establish there were bodies, establish that people died, establish what was on the scene. And they did that, from what I saw from the media accounts today, they did that with, the deputies who were the first to respond and what they found and what they saw. They played the 911 call by Alex Murdaugh so that the jury could hear that. They played some body camera from the deputies, and I think I saw a report where somebody was stating that both sets of attorneys agreed to a redacted version of some other body camera video, which kind of gives you an idea that it was a horrific scene. I think I saw something that somebody was trying to say that the report that the pictures, and they used I think an incorrect term. It looks like the pictures will not be available to the public, but they will be published to the jury. All this evidence that they have has to be published to the jury. So they can physically take it back into their jury room to look over and review before they come to a verdict. So all the basics are coming in. There was a killing, and what happened, and what it looked like, and who was there, who responded, and what Alex Murdaugh said. And there's been mentioned about one of the first things he said was supposedly that Paul had this boat crash, somebody died, and he was getting threats, and to try to show that his mind was, he might be setting something up, or I think in the opening arguments, Dick Harpootlian said, in those situations, you're pretty numb with things. You could say anything. So everybody's setting up for what they're going to be looking to argue and to present in later days. There's been talk about the experts who may be there. And one of the agreements apparently that the attorneys made was that the prosecution did not mention the blood spatter expert in the opening statements. So that might be a precursor to that something they don't know. They're not sure they're going to get into evidence. But the ballistic person from SLED is going to be able to testify according to the initial ruling by the judge. Now, when it comes time for him to testify, the defense has to object at that time in front of the jury, and the judge can revisit that. May not. There could be some other evidence brought to his attention. There could be something that happened in the trial. So those are a couple of things to look down the road. Are those experts going to be allowed to testify? The way it goes is if you proffer an expert, you ask them questions to show they're an expert, and then the defense side, in this case, the criminal defendants defense lawyers can ask about the qualifications to be an expert, and then the judge rules, are they an expert or not, and then testifies. Judge could also say, I want to hear this testimony myself first before the jury does. Judge could say, nope, not going to hear it, but then the proponent of the expert can say, I want to break a proffer so I get the testimony on the record for an appeals court to rule later on, hey, they should have heard that. So that's one of the interesting twists that might come up among those two things, or it might be very rudimentary that they both get qualified, and that's grounds for appeal later on.
I don't want to treat this like a ball game or anything like that. I'm not trying to diminish the importance of all this whatsoever. But what I'd like to do with you at the end of our segment, which we're coming up on here, is just sort of every time we talk to you, just kind of get a feel from you based on what you've seen, read, heard, on how it's going one way or the other. So to this point, prosecution, defense, and I know it's very, very early, but have you got, in your own opinion, your own professional opinion, a little bit of a feel about how it's going one way or the other?
Well, that's an excellent question, because it points out that the prosecution is going, and now all the defense is doing is cross-examining and trying to lay the groundwork for later on saying, see, they didn't prove their case. The prosecution has to be way ahead at the end of their case if they want to win. Just like the defense attorney will have to chip away at the case if they want to present evidence. But, everything's a building block right now. People have to understand they really have to let the jury make the decision, because they're the people who are going to sit there and listen to all the testimony and review it, discuss it. I know there are people who are probably glued to their TV screens or their computer screens watching every move of this, and I wonder, how do they make a living? But, you got to give the jury a chance to evaluate everything. Just because you saw one witness doesn't mean you've seen the most important witness. So I think it's a great question. How's it going? As long as the prosecution is hitting their marks for what they have to prove, then they're doing what they're supposed to do to get a guilty verdict. The defense is trying to find a witness or a fact or a group of witnesses, a group of facts, so they could say, look, here's a reason why you should doubt that this man did it. So I think at this point, it's the basics. If the blood spatter expert and the ballistic expert both don't testify, then I think the prosecution may have some issues that they have to really deal with in order to get a guilty verdict. But if they get them both in, it's a lot easier, I think. Although the blood spatter evidence, who knows what it's going to be. There's new things coming out all the time, because that's what prosecutors should do. They should present the evidence to the jury and not to the media beforehand, just because we want to know what's going to be there. It's all about presenting to the jury right now.
Jim, great stuff. Thank you for paying attention to this so closely and making it easy for us. We'll talk to you again soon. I don't know, maybe if something happens tomorrow night, or sometime next week, we'll set it up. But we really appreciate it. I think this is going to be great for our listeners coming from you, and just having a workman's, a layman's approach to the technical aspect of something so, so tough as this trial. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Phil. Makes you really appreciate sports, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, man. You can hide behind things in the sports world. Can't run from things in the real world. Thank you, my man. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you. All right, Jim Corbett. I think this is going to be good. I think this is going to be, I know it's not what we do, and, only doing it because it's here in South Carolina. And, thank goodness we don't have to have these kind of trials and issues like this that gather national attention every day around here. But I thought this would be worthwhile for us to do. So we will continue with Jim doing that. In the meantime, the PGA Tours at the Farmers Insurance Open, which actually began yesterday. This is a Wednesday through Saturday deal. And so your leader is Sam Ryder at 12 under. Brendan Steele is 9 under. And Tano Goya is at 7 under par. That's the top of the leaderboard. Then we've got, in terms of our folks that we follow, Andrew Novak is 5 under. Red Hot John Rahm is 4 under. Jason Day is at 5 under. Colin Morikawa is at 5 under. And Scott Brown is even after 69.75. Not making the cut, Matthew Neesmith at +1. Will Zalatoris +1, Jonathan Bird +1, Bill Haas at +4, Ben Martin +4, William McGirt +5, and Carson Young +6, Doc Redmond +6, and Kyle Stanley +10. All failed to miss the cut. Pat?
Well, just a story we're going to have to continue with tomorrow. Coach Wilkes, Steve Wilkes, who did not get the job with the Panthers, just something to keep an eye on. He is still part of a lawsuit for wrongful termination against the Cardinals back when he was a coach there. Well, the firm representing him has released a statement saying that they are investigating the Panthers, and it sounds like they may be seeking some kind of legal action against the Panthers. This might get ugly.
Oh, it's never pretty when this happens. Halftime, James Madison is leading Coastal 47-37, and that will do it for tonight. Thanks for being with us. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.
By the way, before we do what's supposed to happen here, thank you for pushing the button.